Okay, so far in this study we have covered faithfulness, and last week you studied contentment. I unfortunately wasn't here last week, but I'm sure you had a good study. Tonight we're going to talk about courage. All right, courage. Courage is something that we all need, but sometimes it's not easy to have. It's challenging, very challenging to have. In Mark 15, we find the account there of when Jesus had died, and Joseph of Arimathea went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. It says that he gathered up courage and went into Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. So courage, it says, if you look at page 13 of your workbook, it says in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10 of the Apostle Paul, it says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might." Courage takes being strong in the Lord. Being strong in the Lord takes courage, I should say, to stand up for the truth. Also, it states here, courage is bravery, a willingness to face a difficult situation head on without flinching. Courage is boldness, an attitude that overcomes opposition no matter how intense or unrelenting it may be. I can't help but think of the people, the hostages and the people in Israel right now, how they have to have such courage to undergo what they are going through. I can't imagine some of the things they're having to go through, but it certainly takes courage to bear up under those things. And I don't know, what else to say about that. Does anyone have any comments on that situation? Okay, so moving on then, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather it is doing what needs to be done in spite of one's fears. It says in the right-hand column there, it says, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, not the absence of fear. So I guess courage is the idea of facing your fears. Everybody has fears, right? I don't think anybody is immune. People claim to be fearless in some cases, but I think it's more of a case of being able to overcome or to handle that fear rather than to not have fear at all. And that is what they say courage is the resistance to fear, or to be able to master our fears. Goes on to say courage is a character quality. I forgot to bring this slide up. This actually mirrors the things that I'm talking about here. Courage is a character quality of one who does not let others intimidate him or push him around. Describes one who is God's man or God's woman and does what is right in hard or challenging conditions. When I read that part about someone pushing him around, it makes me think of a bully, I'm sure some of us have been victims of bullies at various times. But it takes courage to stand up to a person like that. A lot of times a bully turns out to be a coward in the reality of things. Go ahead, Andy.
I know we'll probably get to it here in a little while whenever we get to Joshua, but just thinking about this very first part, being Moses' kind of assistant, he's had first-hand knowledge of the orneriness of the Israelites, all the things that Moses went through with them, and they even not besides their complaining, but at times, they protested. And he was going to take on this job and he wasn't walking into it blind. The courage he had is a really strong courage, because he already knew going in they were going to be a ornery people.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit more in just a minute here. He says here, the key to being courageous is found in a desire to please God. Do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still pleased men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. Galatians 1, verse 10. So it takes courage to please God and to stand for the truth when we're being faced with opposition, doesn't it? It says there can be circumstances when both are possible. And he gives the illustration, for example, his children please him when they obey God, and that pleases him as well. So it's possible to please both God and man. But if you have to come down to a choice, then we have to please God and have the courage to do so. Any thoughts on that, Todd?
Yeah, I think of Timothy, one of the statements here was about intimidation, which always makes me think of 2 Timothy 1, where he says, God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and of sound judgment. And you look at the two letters to Timothy, Paul's giving him some really specific instructions to go face the opposition head on. And, all the way at the beginning of 1 Timothy, he says, I urged you to remain on at Ephesus so that you may instruct certain men not to teach strange doctrines. Well, right there's something to be afraid of. You got to go face these men, and they may be older than you. He's told, let no one look down on your youthfulness. I got to go tell an older man not to teach a strange doctrine? Well, that's something to be scared of.
Yeah.
But you've got to, like you said, if you're focused on pleasing God rather than pleasing men, you'll saddle up and do it. And it may not go well, but at least you did what God expected of you. And they may talk bad about you afterwards, but you did what you had to do.
Yeah, what's the worst they could do? Well, you're going to shoot.
Well, they could ruin the reputation of your congregation by spreading lies about you.
That's true.
There's some pretty awful things that they can do, but you just have to do it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Norm?
Well, this is why the Bible uses the example of the soldier so much when we're talking about giving examples. Where do you start to develop things like this? Because courage is something that is developed. We're not born with courage. We're born with the opposite of courage. And these qualities and characteristics are developed by discipline. And disciplining yourself, that's what Paul talks about. I discipline my body to bring it into subjection. This idea about having your focus on somebody higher than you, on somebody other that you place above you. And again, getting back to the military thing, so many times when soldiers are talking, when they ask them, well, why did you do this? Why did you take that hill? You could have been killed. I did it because I love my brother here, arms next to me. I did it for him. And the discipline is about doing it for something higher than yourself, outside of yourself.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else have a thought? Okay. Psalm 27, verse 14. Verses 13 and 14 says, I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see. Oh, I keep saying what? Believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. To lose heart is to lose courage, isn't it? But then the psalmist instructs us to wait on the Lord and be of good courage. He will strengthen your heart. That's what we need to remember. But when a difficult choice has to be made, a person of courage makes the right decision, and regardless of what other people may think, does what is right in the sight of God. Sometimes it's hard. And we're going to talk about some examples of how it can be hard in a few minutes. On the right-hand column there, he has a few sayings that he wants us to comment on and discuss. The first one is never run away from anything. Never. Winston Churchill. Courage is resistance to fear, as we've already read. Mastery of fear, not absence of fear. Mark Twain. The greatest test of courage on earth is to bear defeat without losing heart. Does anybody disagree with that? Does that make sense? The greatest test of courage is to bear defeat without losing heart. Okay. Courage is grace under pressure. Grace is unmerited favor, right? So courage is unmerited favor under pressure. I'm not quite sure I understand that.
Yeah, he may be using that in a different sense. Just the ability to handle the pressure, right? A lack of stumbling, the gracefulness in the sense of being able to get through it.
Okay. And then a ship in harbor is safe. But that is not what a ship is built for. And that talks to us. You could say that we are that ship. And we can't just stay in the harbor all the time and stay in our safe zone. We have to be out there, with the world, trying to teach the world, trying to be an example to those in the world, or else our purpose is lost as Christians. Okay. Yes.
And that's a huge lesson learned for us. I mean, that's something that's being stripped away from our kids right now in every aspect of society, school, and everything, where it's more important to be, for you, individually, personally, to be comfortable and safe in whatever environment you're in. And, you are to tell everybody around you what it is that makes you feel safe, so that they can adjust their behavior to make you feel safe. And that is it's a total opposite of what, in fact, a human being was designed to do. We were designed to go out and to accomplish things in a world that is not favorable to us.
Right.
And in every aspect. And so I think this is something that is extremely important. And they're not teaching it in school, for instance. So unless we teach it at home how to gain this characteristic in the evil world, we're going to lose memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true. Okay, let's take a look at some biblical examples of those who had courage. The first one, let's go back. The first one is Joshua. Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 9 is the text here. Let's read that text right quick. Joshua chapter 1, 1 through 9. Let's see, we'll take 2 verses each. Ray, I guess we'll start with you, if that's okay. And the last person will get 1 verse, but that's okay. Joshua chapter 1, verse 1.
After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, therefore, arise, go over this Jordan, you and all the people, to the land which I am giving to them, the children of Israel.
Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I said to Moses, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites and the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory.
No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so will I be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them.
Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success.
Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Okay. All right. So what was Joshua's job?
And be strong and courageous.
Okay. Yeah, to lead the people over the Jordan. Also, he was responsible for dividing up the land among all the tribes. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the next question. How many times did God tell Joshua to be courageous?
3.
3 times. What were the verses?
6, 7, and 9.
Okay, 6, 7, and 9. And you know what? I think about Moses, when God called Moses. Moses was very timid about trying to do what God wanted him to do, wasn't he? He made a lot of excuses. He tried very hard to get out of it. And it sounded like he didn't have a lot of courage either, but God promised him that he would be with him, and of course he was. He gave him his brother Aaron to be his spokesman, his mouthpiece. So they worked together, and of course that's a good thing too, to have a companion, just like Moses and Joshua were companions. But but there's nothing new about being timid, I guess is the word, or whatever the word is, it's opposite of courageous, cowardly. Because we know Moses was, and now Joshua is showing signs of it. Otherwise, God would not have had to tell him 3 times, be strong and courageous. He must have been rather the other way. He must have had leanings in the other direction. And I could fully understand why, because you're trying to lead over 1 million people. You've got a lot of responsibility. And, if you fail in anything that God has told you to do in your leadership, you're going to be held accountable for it, and it's very serious. So it took a lot of courage to be in his shoes and to do what he did. Yes?
It's interesting, too, that if we think about it, the courage is something that is reasoned. It's not something that just happens by accident. You don't fall upon it. There's a reason for you to be courageous. Like again, going back to the military example, they're told over and over again, just do what you've been taught and you'll be okay. Follow through with what your training has told you and you'll be okay. You're following your officers and they know what they're doing and you'll be okay. God is with you, Joshua, and you will be okay. And the same thing with Moses back there and everything. So it's something, courage doesn't just happen. There's a reason for it. And it's good logical reasoning that we should have. But unless we know God, we're not going to believe it. And then the fear will set in, and now the opposite of courage, we become a coward.
Yeah.
We see Joshua's courage manifested 40 years earlier in Numbers 13 when he and Caleb were the only ones who, were willing to depend upon God and have that courage to take the land 40 years prior. But, the other 10 failed in their courage and trusting God.
Good point, excellent point. Yeah, he and Caleb did show a lot of courage at that time. But God still saw a need to tell him 3 times. So maybe some things had changed, I don't know. But it still, like I said, was a tough job that he was taking on.
An interesting number in the Bible. If you get something like that 3 times, that means it's really important. So this was going to be one of the key driving factors in Joshua being successful, and it's right here at the beginning of when he's doing his work. So we can tell by him saying it 3 times. It's like this, and then like this, and then boom, like this. We know that is a real point of emphasis.
Right. Okay. What was the key to Joshua's success?
Guidance.
Okay. Following God's law or God's guidance. I wrote down verses 7 and 8. It says, only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. So the key is to meditate on the law of God day and night. Do not deviate from it to the right or to the left, and you will have great success. Huh? Yes, exactly. Right, exactly. Who told Joshua to be courageous in verse 18?
People.
Okay, the people. Yeah, that was kind of surprising, I thought. This time it wasn't God, it was the people telling Joshua. They answered Joshua, this is the people, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. I'm reading out verse 16, sorry. 18 says, whoever rebels against your commandment and disobeys your words, whatever you command him, shall he put to death. Whatever you command, shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So at least the people were encouraging to him as well. So that was good. Number 5 is, what was the military strategy against Jericho? That's in verses 1 through 5 of chapter 6. I think we remember what it was, don't we?
The strategy was to do exactly what God tells you to do.
Which was what?
Which was to march around the city and blow the trumpets when he tells you to blow the trumpets on the 7th day.
Okay.
But it goes hand in glove with chapter 1. Be careful to do exactly what I tell you to do. And they did.
So they marched around the city once a day for 7 days, right? Or for 6 days, I should say. On the 7th day, they marched around it 7 times. And then what?
Blow the trumpets and everything.
Blow the trumpets and shout. And the walls fell down flat. Now, I looked up a little bit of information about the walls of Jericho, and it said that there was an inner wall and an outer wall. The inner wall was 12 feet thick, and the outer wall was 6 feet thick. Can you imagine? And obviously it's the power of God that's doing this. It's not their marching around and blowing the trumpets, but they did that because that was what God told them to do. And because of their obedience, God helped them and knocked the walls down. It's so amazing. I think it's such a show of faith. Any other thoughts on that? Yes.
And I think that was maybe the point behind this first battle, of them going in and doing something that's so non-military, so non-confrontational. So even though they followed it, they may be like, okay, this is the fourth day, we're marching around, and then when they followed everything completely and they saw the power of what God could do for them, that was probably to build that courage and that strength and faith, because they were going to have to keep going throughout the land and doing the same. And of course, the next, here in a little bit, they didn't follow the plan or consult God, and they got tricked by the Gibeonites. So, there's obviously some times that they fall short, but I just kind of think that this military strategy, or going into the land and doing it in this way, at least starting off, was probably to really prove to them that He's with them.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts? If any of you can't hear something that's being said up here, raise your hand and I'll try to repeat it, or summarize it at least. Go ahead.
Okay, then, with Joshua and Caleb, they were the only two that had faith that God would take care of them and do what He said He would do. Right now, he's got the faith in God to know, just marching around, if somebody else told him to do that, what do you think? Now, that's crazy. But when God tells you to do that, you have that faith and you know that's God's plan. You do it, and He will be there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a look at Esther. Who was Esther? Anybody?
It was a Jew that was raised by her uncle Mordecai, and she delivered her people.
Okay. Do you remember where she was when we meet her?
She was living with was living with Mordecai, right?
Right, but do you know what I meant? What country?
Oh, Persia. Yeah.
Okay, Persia. Specifically in Susa.
Susa, capital.
Okay, which is in Persia. And I did a little research because I wasn't sure exactly where this fell in the history of the Israelites. Turns out it fell sometime after the Babylonian captivity when the Persians took over. And so I had wondered if it was during the Babylonian captivity, because they mentioned Nebuchadnezzar in here in the text. But no, it was apparently later on. So she was like you said, a Jewish woman, very beautiful. And the other thing that they said about her is she had no father or mother. So she was being raised by her uncle. Was that right? Mordecai. Okay. Why would Mordecai not bow to Haman? And that's in Esther 3, verses 2 through 5.
This is worship God only.
I'm sorry?
This is worship God only.
Correct. He used to worship God only, that's right. Not bow to any man. Although there were plenty of people who were bowing to Haman. But Mordecai did not. He was a Jew, of course. As Esther chapter 3, verse 2 says, and all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him but Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. All right, what was Haman's plan for the Jews?
Destroy them all.
Kill them all.
To destroy them. Why did he want to do that?
Was Mordecai a Jew?
I'm sorry?
Because Mordecai was a Jew?
Yeah, okay. But why kill all of them if he just was after Mordecai?
He was an Agagite.
I can hear you.
Remember King Agag?
Yeah.
Way back in Jewish history, so Haman was an Agagite, offspring of
Okay.
of Agag back in the day, and so similar to the situation you have in the Middle East today, where you just have a blood hatred of one people against another people.
Yeah.
It just carries generation after generation.
It seems to go all the way back to Jacob and Esau, doesn't it? Okay. The people just hated them. The Jews were hated have been hated for centuries, much like Christians today are hated in many instances. Okay, let's see. What does it mean that Esther had come to the kingdom for such a time as this?
Deliver her people.
Okay, to deliver her people. Okay. Any other thoughts?
God's providence at work, putting the right person in the right place at the right time. Not a miraculous situation, but relying on their free will to do what is right, and they do, and so God's will is done.
Okay. Yeah. The providence of God probably had put her in that spot, in that position. Because the text says, who knows, maybe you were put here for a purpose. Yeah, Todd.
Yeah, I think you see the same thing maybe in the story of Joseph. Hey, he's given the ability to interpret dreams, and Pharaoh has a dream. Same with Daniel, given this ability, and then Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that requires that ability. I think about this verse a lot in my own life. Anytime you see a situation arise, maybe I was put into this moment to be able to help with this situation. And anytime that we just say, well, maybe someone else will take care of that, or maybe it'll work out, without me having to intervene, we are showing cowardice. We don't know why God puts us in these moments, but we do know we need to stand up for God every opportunity that we get.
That's true. A lot of times we miss the open doors that God gives us, don't we? Okay, how did Esther show tremendous courage?
Francis.
Yes, Francis.
Even though she was the queen, anybody that went before the king without being summoned could have been taken their life.
Mm-hmm.
So she went and did that, and she had the courage to be able to go there, or she would have said, no, I'm not going to do that because I could die.
Yeah. So she said, what was the statement she made?
If I die, I die.
If I die, I die. But I'm going to do my best to help my people. That was her attitude. That's a good attitude.
Well, she also asked for everyone to be praying for her in that situation. So she was kind of like all these quotes we had when we started. Like, she has fear, but she's showing courage. Like, you have to push through and
Overcome.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. John the Baptist, Matthew 14, verses 1 through 12. We're running short on time. I don't think we should take time to read those verses now, but I think most of us remember the situation with John. So the first question is, what had John said that required great courage? And who did he say it to?
Said it to Herod, and he You should not have
Unlawfully.
this, your brother's wife.
Right, he was unlawfully married to his brother's wife, Herodias, and John called him out for it and says, no, this is not right. So what happened to John because of that?
Thrown in the who's cow.
Lost his head.
Throw him in prison.
Well, he eventually lost his head. First he went to prison, and then I think we know the story, how that Herodias' daughter asked for John's head on a platter because at Herodias' prompting, she asked him for that, and he could not go back on his promise, even though the king, Herod, really liked John and didn't want to have him killed, but he did, had to. Was there some other way that John might have approached the situation to save his life? Well, he could have kept his mouth shut, I guess. That wouldn't have shown a lot of courage. But he didn't, and he did what was right. And even though he lost his life, I think he saved his life in the long run.
Hey, Dad.
Yes.
This is a great example that we should follow, right? When you have to have courage to go talk to someone else about their sins.
Oh, yeah.
And it's gut-wrenching to have to do that, but it's actually showing love. And a lot of times people will criticize the person who went and upset the person about the fact that they're in sin, but they're the ones who are actually showing love and risking something by doing so. Obviously, John here risked his life, and you mentioned, what are they going to do, take out a gun and kill you? Probably not. We're probably not risking our life, but we are risking our relationship, and you never know what the person's going to say about you later. So you're risking a lot, but that's love.
Right. I wonder how many of us, other than those who have served as an elder, have ever gone to someone that you knew that was in sin and tried to talk to them about it. I know that elders a lot of times have to do those kinds of things. But I just wonder, in situations where there are no elders, or just a situation that you may know about and nobody else knows about, you might be faced with that sometime. So that's something to think about. All right. Let's see. Where did we get to? Was there someone? Okay. Who would you be willing to die if you told the truth, or would you be tempted to lie? I think that's a question each one of us has to ask ourselves. I don't necessarily need to have you answer that, but it's something to think about. How we would react in a difficult situation. Okay, next is Stephen, Acts chapter 7. And we know the story of Stephen. He was preaching to the Jews there. And verses 51 through 53, particularly in Acts 7, is the part we want to look at. Let's see. Where did we get to in our reading? Let's see. Was Rhoda the last one? Bob was last? Okay. Rhoda, would you like to read those verses for me? Let's see. What is it again? Oh, yeah. Acts 7, verses 51 to 53.
You stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears, you always resist the Holy Spirit, as your fathers did, so do you. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who foretold the coming of the Just One, of whom you now have become the betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the direction of angels and have not kept it.
Okay, so he made some pretty strong accusations here, didn't he? He called them stiff-necked people, uncircumcised in heart and ears, always resisting the Holy Spirit. As your fathers did, so do you. Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute? And they killed those who announced beforehand the coming of the righteous one, whom you have now betrayed and murdered. you who received the law as delivered by angels and did not keep it. No wonder they got mad. You know, that's really strong accusations, but he's right. It's absolutely true. But they didn't want to hear it. And I don't suppose anybody would when you have a strong accusation against someone, even though it may be true. So what had, okay, okay, number 2 is what was the crowd's first reaction to what Stephen said? Verse 54.
They cut in the heart, and they lashed on him with their teeth.
Okay. My book Bible says they were enraged and they ground their teeth at him. Does yours say gnashed at him with their teeth? Yeah. I don't know what that means. I'm going to get you. Okay. What was their second reaction or response? I'm sorry?
Stopped their ears. They stopped their
Okay,
ears.
they cried out, stopped their ears, didn't want to hear it anymore?
Chased him out of the city and stoned him.
Yeah, exactly. Ran up on him with one accord. And a couple of verses later, it does tell us that they stoned him, took him out of the city and stoned him. Why didn't Stephen soften the message?
Truth is the truth.
Prophets were also persecuted.
I'm sorry?
Made the statement that the prophets were also persecuted.
That's true. Are you saying that's why he didn't soften the message?
Sometimes you can have so much tact, you make no contact. And he was a full contact sport here.
Okay. Because his message was the truth, right? The Spirit inspired him to say it, and he had no choice but to say it. He wasn't. It's kind of like the others we looked at here, Esther, and having the courage to do the right thing and to say what actually needs to be heard, needs to be said. It takes great courage, and I know Stephen had that courage, and he lost his life because of it. Okay, the last 3 questions here are kind of... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Francis.
Okay, it also states here, 55, but he being full of the Holy Spirit. So he couldn't soften the message because he knew where his position was. He had to tell the truth.
He was inspired.
And he gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God. So before he saw the glory of God, you could say, why didn't he soften his message? But after he saw the glory of God, you know why he didn't soften his message.
Right. Because he did what God wanted to do. Well, we have these 3 final questions, which are interesting. I'd love to go over them, but our time is gone. Can you think of any other examples of courage? I thought of several. I'll just mention a few that I thought of. David versus Goliath, Elijah versus Jezebel, our Lord Jesus Christ in the face of persecution and crucifixion. Also Moses, we've already talked about, Gideon, Daniel and his 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 3, and other passages related to that. Can you think of some biblical examples of courage, or non-biblical examples of courage? I thought of serving as an elder, preaching the truth out of season, like when it's not very well received, or telling somebody who's in sin that they're wrong. That's a tough thing. And then the other one, I'll let each of you answer on your own. Can you tell of one instance in your own life when you have shown courage? That's something to think about. All right, that's all we have, I think. These are just some things that Jesse had, if we had time to go over them, but we don't. So that's it. Thank you.